Hey folks, it's Frithgar here, how you doing? Welcome back to Farming Simulator 19 here on Ravenport. We're just finishing up the last of the oat harvest. We actually finished the last of the oat harvest. That's all done. It's all done and dusted and finished. Finito, finished with, done, and yeah, you get the idea. And I'm just going to unload this into here and we're going to park our combine back down the bottom. I had trouble with the combine stopping unexpectedly in the last episode, and a few people said that it might actually be because there could have been just a tiniest bit of an alternative crop left down in the bottom corner of that field. So the combine thought that I was trying to change crops, and so it stopped, and then it's not going to start back up on the oats again until I switch the combine off and switch it back on again. That does actually make a lot of sense, because it didn't happen again. So, unfortunately, it looks like it wasn't something to do with the weeds. It was to do with that instead. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. By the time you watch this episode, I should have done the live stream. That is going to be on a different map. Or it will have been on a different map. I'm still not entirely sure which one it's even going to be, so we haven't got any magical time warp other than the fact that I don't know what map you're watching for the live stream. So, yeah, there's not really a lot else to say about that. Bring this one bouncing and bumbling its way back over to here. Bring you to right there. Lower down that header. Somebody said to me, why have I got the reel so high when I'm harvesting grain? Why is the reel way above the crop? Why isn't it in the crop like it should be? And I think it's because, one, these reels work slightly differently to the reels that you often see in the US, where the fingers look a little bit different. The fingers are wider on the head as it used in the US, and the way that they rotate, they sort of flip over the top and come back down into the crop, whereas this one stays exactly where it is and just kind of stays in that same position. It doesn't move. And usually when you're combining here in the UK, you have it so that that is just touching the tops of the crop. And the idea is just to stop the crop from falling forwards and give it a nudge if it needs it onto the table. You don't have the reel down in the crop hauling the stuff in, because all that happens is the crop gets caught up on the reel and ends up sort of just going round and round and round like this all over the reel and makes a terrible mess. It looks awful. It really does. It looks terrible. It makes a mess, and it can cause it to clump up on the front as well if you get any issues with it. So you would normally have it so that the reel is up and just sort of touching the tips of the crop, and half the time I've seen farmers running with it above the crop and not touching it at all. But you do want to, normally you would have it so the comb is just touching the crop a little bit, just to help nudge it into the front, but not doing very much more than that. So that's why I do it like that, because that's how we tend to use it here in the UK. But keep in mind that in the UK, we do a much more intensive agriculture than you do over in the US. It was a US-based person that was asking me. I know Australia, you do quite extensive style of farming, more similar to Canada and the US. And we do a much more intensive crop over here in the UK. And a lot of Europe as well. We put on a lot more fertilizers than you do. And we have a much higher yield per acre than what you get. You know, it's when you get, I think, maybe so it's 1, maybe 2 tons an acre, is it? I think it's something along those lines. 1 or 2 tons an acre. We can get upwards of 4 or 5 tons an acre. With wheat. Different crops, it is different, and that is quite a high yield, I think. Someone's going to tell me that I've actually got those figures wrong now, but that's a rough ballpark sort of thing. You get the idea. We do tend to get a much higher yield here in the UK than you do over in the US, because we put so much more fertilizer on. We plant differently, and yeah, it's a much more intensive style of agriculture. And our country is suited to it. We got the rainfall for it, for a start. And large chunks of the US, you don't have the rainfall to be able to grow your crops the way that we do, and the soil structure is made up differently, and there's 101 different reasons why it works in some places and doesn't work in other places, and you can fill books with those reasons and yeah, still not sort of quite cover it all. But long story short, we have a different style of agriculture, and that in turn leads to a slightly different style of using the combine when you come to doing the harvest. Now, there's another thing that I want to do today, and that is a little exercise with the... I'm just going to unload that right there. A little exercise with the chickens and the eggs and those egg pallets that we've got that someone has suggested. Michael Boers, I think it is, if I pronounce it. Is it Boers or Boers? I'm not actually sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Michael. Anyway, we'll just call you Michael for now. Michael said that we need to do a particular thing, and if this works, Michael shall be my new god for this week. Only for this week, mind. I have a new god every week, just about. Someone comes up with a really awesome suggestion, and yeah. So, Michael, you will be my new god this week if this thing works. So let me just lower that one down there. Before we worry about doing any, I was going to say combining, baling over in the field there, we need to go over to here. We need to get our front loader. This one right here. Oh, by the way, there's some more mods. There's more mods coming out just about every day at the moment. It's brilliant. They're really throwing the mods. They got over 200 of them lined up ready for testing. But we got this one here, the JCB, the classic forestry JCB skid steer. I really like this mod. That being said, I haven't actually used the New Holland ones at all in-game yet, so these may also be very cool. These are a lot more similar to Bobcats. It looks a lot more similar to the Bobcat that I used to drive. I drove a selection of different Bobcats. The controls inside look pretty much identical to the Bobcat. There's even the pedals on the floor. Ordinarily, you use your hands for controlling the machine, and then you use pedals on the floor for driving, don't you? You know, forward, back, brake, etc. Whereas Bobcats, it's completely the reverse. Those controls there are the track, so they're forward and back, and the pedals on the bottom, they're for using the arms on the loader. And some people really can't get their heads around this, and I don't know if it's the same in this one. I'm assuming it's the same in this one as well, except I don't see any foot pedals with this one. So this may be altogether different. But yeah, the New Holland does look like the Bobcat from inside the cab. Some people really, really don't get on with them. I know people who are experienced tractor drivers who have done a lot of tractor work and loader work and are very good at operating loaders who just cannot get on with operating a Bobcat because of the reversal of controls. Suddenly you're operating your loader arm with your feet, and for some people, thus, you know, it's a very, very difficult thing to sort of get your head round. Other people, no worries, just get on and do it. And I can get my head around that very, very easily. I get on with them really, really well. I really enjoy driving them, and yeah, I think in part it is to do with my gaming. I did point this out to... there was a group of farmers. Some of them were complaining about Bobcats and how terrible it was, and they should be changed, and you can't be expected to do it with your feet. And other people were saying, oh, well, it just takes a bit of practice and so on. And I said, well, I play games. I play lots of computer games, and I learned to use different controls for the same functions for all sorts of things. Maybe that's how I find it so easy. There was only one out of a large group of them that thought that might have some bearing on it, and because his son also played computer games, and his son also found it really easy to switch between different machines. None of the rest of them are having it. Nope. Computer games are evil. They are the sign of the end times and all sorts of other rubbish. So, yeah. Farmers... older farmers, I should say, because I know that a lot of farmers do actually watch this series, but I have noticed that of the various different industries that I've worked in some retail, I've worked in sort of warehouse type thing, factories, building, and agriculture, and I've generally notice a much stronger feeling against the idea of computer games in general in agriculture than in any other industry. So I'm asking you today, the gamers who are watching, but not just the gamers, the farmer gamers, those of you who actually farm in real life or have a lot to do with farming in real life, whether you work as a contractor, whether you just have a lot of ties with agriculture like me now. I don't actually work in farming anymore, but I do have a lot of ties with agriculture still. I'm asking anyone that's in a similar situation who has a lot of ties with agriculture. Now, I'm going to buy 3 of these. Get into the comment section down below and let me know your experiences with people and gaming. What do they think of gaming? How have you had the same kind of really negative reaction to gaming in general? I know I have. I've definitely had it. You know, you let slip to a farm, a lot of farmers, you let them know that you play a computer game and they lose their minds over it. They're quite happy to sit there and talk about some rubbish that was on the TV last night. That seems quite acceptable, but you play a computer game, my goodness me, it's like you've... I don't know. I really don't know. It's such a strong feeling against it. I mean, I know that this is actually not just a phenomenon that you will find in farming. You will find this sort of the world over. But it really is... I've always found it quite bizarre. It's deemed perfectly acceptable to sit down and watch the TV soap. So here in the UK, we have likes of Emmerdale, Coronation Street, EastEnders, and it's absolutely fine to watch that religiously every evening without fail. That is fine, and they'll have long conversations about it. But if you tell them that you play computer games, you're wasting your life. How dare you? You're just wasting your life with that rubbish. It's gonna ruin your life. Well, hang on a minute. I'm not the one that's sitting there watching soap. I could say the same about you. But nope. Apparently this doesn't go 2 ways. So, yeah, I just want to hear some experiences that people have had with really strong negative reactions to gaming in general. And I do find it quite amusing. And yeah, it can be tempting to get upset about it, but I would strongly urge you not to let it get to you, because, you know, generally all it is that person does things differently than me. That's generally all it is. And a lot of people struggle to accept anything that is different. And that is true the world over. It doesn't matter where you are. A lot of people do struggle to accept anything that is different. And someone who likes to play computer games instead of watching TV is someone who is different, and therefore, you know, not to be trusted. And in my experience, builders... I've worked as a builder for a while, and you know, many of you know that. And I have found that builders do tend to be, you know, not particularly trusting of anything that is different, but they don't tend to be quite as bad as farming, as farmers in general. It is a very generalized thing, but I have found that in agriculture, you tend to find more of the situation where different, unusual is not to be trusted. And it's not the fault of the people here, right? It's not entirely the fault of the people. You do find it a lot less among the younger generation you do among the older generation, and I think a large part of it is because years ago in agriculture, trying something doing anything different, going against the grain, very, very often ended in something not being successful, right? We got tried and tested methods for farming, and people who come along and do new things and do different things very, very often ended in failure, which is then, you know, you fail, your crops don't grow, you don't get your income, your cattle die, you don't get your income. And so doing something different is sort of long become associated with bad. Different equals bad. And this has kind of been hammered into generation after generation of farmers over many, many years. And then you get to a point where, you know, different equal bad is just kind of almost racial memory nearly. You know, farmers in general, different equals bad. And so then suddenly we've got a new generation of people that the world has changed beyond recognition in the last 50 years. And quite frankly, the world has changed so phenomenally in the last 50 years. It's more than it has for thousands of years. And suddenly we've got these absolutely phenomenal changes. Things that we wouldn't have dreamed possible as little as 30 years ago are now commonplace. Things that we wouldn't have dreamed possible 10 years ago are becoming commonplace. And it's things like that that I think, you know, some people do struggle to keep up with. And it's also, I think, it's sort of how it shows that, you know, you've got the generation gap in agriculture, and I do think that generation gap is a lot stronger than it is in a lot of other areas. I'm not saying it's exclusive to agriculture by any stretch. There's probably plenty of you who've got similar stories in other industries. It's just agriculture is one that I've grown up in. I grew up in agriculture. I know all about agriculture, and I've experienced a lot of different things. So I'm interested today to hear about your various experiences with gaming. I did say in particular, those of you who are farmers, and how your interest in gaming in general has been received amongst other farmers, but I am also talking about the rest of the world. You know, it's something that is accepted by some groups and not accepted by others. Now, Michael, I think it's Michael Boers. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm probably got this completely wrong. If I have, spell it out phonetically in the comment section. I'll see if I can get it right next time. But anyway, what he said was, put the egg pallet in the egg spawn point, being very careful not to cover where the first one spawns. So don't cover that one, but then place the pallet in the spawn point. So I've put the pallet in a spawn point. Right, it's in the spawn point, it's right in the middle. I don't know if this is the right place or not, but apparently it should now load itself up. Right, that one will stay there, but this now should load itself up. How this works, I've got no idea, but we'll soon find out. So I'm going to go and get another one, and I'm going to put the other one on the other spawn point over there. I'm not going to worry about one way over there with the small thing. I'll pick up a third pallet and I'll run it over that side, and then we'll move this trailer here with the last egg pallet on it, and we'll put it off somewhere. Oh, actually, we might want to use this trailer again. No, probably not. I'm unlikely to use this trailer again because I've got a I've got another trailer that I want to use. There's another mod. I'll show you. There's another one. It's in the mod hub, don't worry. And it's probably going to be under baling technology if I can find it. Cotton technology. Nope, it's not that one. Where are you? There you go, baling technology. It's going to be under here somewhere. There we go. That one right there. Stonesons. There. That bad boy. One of those trailers. I like these trailers. I really do. So we can have any colour we like. And we can have any rim colour we like as well. That is a snazzy looking trailer. I think this could be a part of our farm. I won't get it today, but I am curious if anybody would like me to get a trailer this colour. If you would, get into the comment section and just let me know if you'd like this trailer colour. Right? I realise I'm asking you to do an awful lot in the comment section today. But there we go. I'm going to keep asking you to do things in the comment section. It's just something that I do. So we want to bring this one over here, and we want to make sure that it goes into the spawn point, but does not cover the first spawn point. Not sure that I did that entirely correctly. I think I bounced it a little bit too much. So what I'll do is I'll pull it back over there. There we go. That's much better. It's actually fairly neat and tidy. Right, now I will back up. Oop, steady. I won't back up at all. If I go to there, I can put that one on. Straps on there, and we'll just run this one over this way a bit. Unload one of those pallets. Actually, I probably want to unload both of them. We need to move some wool. Are we ready to sell wool yet? I haven't actually checked the price for a bit. What are we going to get? It's 1,000 litres of pallets. Whatever this price says, that's what we get. 1,188 per pallet from that wool. I did have a chart that it listed off the various prices that you can expect for different levels for wool. So let me just consult that chart a minute. Well, hang on a minute. According to the chart I'm looking at, wool on New Farmer, which is what we've got this on, with economic difficulty should be set on easy. Let's just check that, shall we? Here. Economic difficulty easy. Wool should be anywhere from 1,500 up to 2,300. That doesn't look like 1,500 up to 2,300. That looks like 1,100, 1,200. That looks more along the lines of the price you'd expect to get on Farm Manager mode, which is the middle one, on normal prices. So not really sure what's going on there. I'm guessing that my data is, or the chart is wrong. Well, I don't know if that's a good price or not. So, oh no, I want to leave that one running. So what we'll do is we will leave that one. I'm just going to drop that one there, and I'm not going to do anything with the pallets for a minute. The wool can stay spotted. I will just move 2 of those wool pallets. We'll shove them over so they're out of the way. We're getting more and more and more wool pallets over here. Eventually we are going to have to do something with these wool pallets. And I'm hoping that by that point I'll have some kind of auto-load trailer and I can just pop them all up like that, rather than me having to manually pick them up. Because I really don't want to have to manually pick them all up. At least not with this one. It takes ages. It's not the easiest thing to do either. Let's bring you back down here. There we go. And we'll just stop you there a minute. Like that. And then I want to go over to this one. So, we've got those 2 pallets there. And in theory, they should start filling up with eggs. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the time scale to 15 like that. I'm going to start the baler, and we're going to start doing a little bit of baling. So we'll leave it on 15 times speed, just so that the eggs can spawn a little bit, and we can start working our way through some of this straw, getting it out of the way. And then our next job is going to be, obviously, doing some replanting. We want to get some more stuff planted in this field. I'm going to do a better job of planting this time round. Don't worry, we're going to plant it out properly. I didn't do it properly last time, and I should have done. I've been wanting to kind of like move time forward at a reasonable rate so that we can keep these chickens going and seeing how, basically just generate more income. I want to keep the money going so that we've got a chance of seeing how the chickens can, in the long term, become really, really profitable. I think they can, especially with these egg pallets. If the egg pallets work like I've been led to believe that they might work, they'll auto-load themselves. That's going to make them even better. Right? They've suddenly become even more viable, even more of a sort of strong point for using and becoming part of the game. There we go. Just get that lot down there. Because we're going to be able to we're going to be able to make a load of money out of the eggs, which means that we can then properly start farming chickens. Instead of, like, the chickens just being a little bit of a sideshow that occasionally earns a few extra pennies, they're actually now becoming another sort of central agricultural item that you can make a serious bit of cash out of. And that's something that I really like. I really do love the fact that we can now sort of turn to the chickens as a viable full-time farming enterprise. I mean, yes, we can go and buy the grain for them if we want to, but I'm not entirely convinced that that would be profitable. I suspect it will be profitable, a little bit, but not massively so. Whereas, if we're doing it like this, if we're growing our own grain for it, one, we do have a bit of variation. We're not just picking up eggs and dumping them down again. But we're also... not round there a minute. Yeah, we're not just collecting eggs and selling them. We're also growing a bit of wheat and keeping the chickens happy like that. We've got straw to deal with. We've got various different farming tasks, but the chickens become the central purpose of the farm. A bit like running a dairy farm in the game, whereas, you know, you grow the hay, you make your own silage, and, you know, the silage could either be bales or it could be done with clamp silage. So you've got various options for that, plus you're growing grain so that you can get straw for the cows, for feed and for bedding. And so you end up doing all of the different tasks on the farm. You're doing a lot of the different, well, not all of them, obviously, but you're doing a lot of them. You're growing different grains in order to be able to get straw. The grain you're selling as profit. You're not actually doing anything else with it, but then you've got to have grass fields, and you've got to make sure that you're getting hay and silage and stuff like that out of them, and it gives you a nice varied lot of gameplay. With the chickens, yes, you've only got to go and get the grains. You don't have anything else that you've got to give the chickens, which I do think is a little bit disappointing. You don't even have to put water in for them when you should do, and I also think it's a bit of a shame that we're only giving them plain grain, because if you were doing that in real life, you'd also be supplying them with grit. And grit can be done in a number of ways, but, I mean, we used to do it with just like a rough... it wasn't actually builder's sand, it was like the next step up from sand. It was kind of a gravelly type sand stuff, but you buy a bag full of that from the builder's merchant and feed that to the chickens. And they eat that. They eat stones in... for those of you who don't know, chickens will eat a lot of small bits of gravel and stuff, because they don't have stomachs like we do. They don't have a stomach that is filled with acid and breaks food down. What the birds have instead, and chickens, geese, ducks, I think just about all... I think all birds do. I'm not quite sure about other birds, but certainly geese and ducks and chickens and that. And they do. They have the grain goes into the first stomach, which is called a crop, and it doesn't have acids in it, but it does sort of keep everything warm and damp, and it softens the grains up a bit. And then they move into the next bit, which is called the gizzard, and this is just a big solid lump of muscle, and this is where the gravel ends up going. The gravel goes into the gizzard and it gets stored there. And the gizzard sort of manipulates, it grinds. It's essentially a grindstone. And the grains go in there, and then the gizzard gets to work along with the gravel as well, and it sort of keeps constantly mashing it all together, and it breaks down the grain into a very fine pulp. And then this moves on through the rest of the body to be digested. Now, obviously, during this process, some of the gravel that is in the gizzard will end up leaving the gizzard to it sort of just accompanies the food and carries on through and works its way through the whole digestion system. So if you keep chickens and you keep them in a small confined space and you don't provide them with any gravel of any kind, but you're giving them whole grains. Now, a lot of special foods have gravel and hard stuff built into it, and chickens can digest that. That's how the battery cages work. They don't give them gravel, they just give them a special type of food that's got this all taken into account. But if you're keeping chickens in a more natural environment, like running around a bit, but you have them in a pen like they are over there, there's probably not going to be, in a set pen, enough gravel to keep them going forever. So you need to supply them with gravel. You've actually got to give your chickens gravel to eat so that they can digest things properly. And we used to keep our chickens in a small ark, a small hut that you'd move around. It had plenty of room for the chickens to move around in, but you pick the thing up and you move it around the field to give them a fresh bit of scratching every day. And then they stay there for 24 hours, scratching away at the grass, eating whatever they find, and then you pick it up and you move it to the next bit, and they stay there, and that's their fresh scratchings that they have each day. And yeah, there are some who think that it's not very nice keeping them in a small cage. It's not that small a cage, I should hasten to add. The whole thing probably takes up the footprint area about the size of the this large tractor here. So yes, it's not very big by our standards, but the chickens get fresh scratchings every day, and they're not very often trying to escape. And you have the added bonus that it's a secure pen. They get fresh grass in it every single day, and the fox can't get to them. If you have them in a set location, the fresh grass very quickly turns to mud, and then they don't have fresh grass, and they've just got this muddy pen. So, you know, if you want to keep them safe, actually having them just running around loose all the time, usually that ends with the chicken being eaten by the fox. So very, very few farms I've ever been to have ever had chickens actually running loose around the farmyard. You see lots of pictures of chickens running loose around farmyards as like the archetypal way that farmyards are run. No, very, very few actual real-life farmyards will have chickens running around them like that, because it's just not practical. One, the chickens get run over by the tractors, and two, makes them easy pickings for the fox. Right? You can't go and find all the chickens, you can't round them up, and so they end up being eaten by the fox. You don't want your chickens to be eaten by the fox, because you like your chickens, you want to keep them alive. So the ARC method is something that we've used for years. We have 5 or 6 chickens in the pen, and they get moved around the field, so they get their fresh pickings each day, and they're kept safe. So we would, as they were in a grass field going round, we would give them a plate of food. They would have one bowl that had food in, and that would be either whole grain barley or whole grain wheat, and another food that had gravel in it, and then a water drinker as well. And the gravel one would be consumed at about a quarter of the speed that they would eat up all the food. So they would eat it. They would eat quite a lot of it. It's surprising how much gravel the chickens will take in. So there you have it. Chickens do actually need to eat gravel. And I was thinking about this the other day, because I thought, well, in this game, it would have been really cool if, you know, there was like a quarry around, and you could go and you could dig stuff up from the quarry, and you could transport it over to the builder's merchant. Now, you wouldn't want to be making vast sums of money out of that. If you could go to the quarry and you could spoon a little bit of gravel out and put it into a trailer and then take it to a builder's merchant in town and sell it, you'd want it to be a pretty low profit sort of enterprise. So it's something that you could do occasionally, but you're not going to make vast sums of money out of it. So it sort of doesn't take away from the core farming of the game. It's like another interesting diversion like forestry, you know, a bit of mining or something. But as a side note to that, you got a supply of gravel, so then the chickens could actually have gravel. You could have to go and get a trailer load of gravel and bring that back, and chickens would then need to have a bit of gravel supplied to them in order to aid their digestion properly, because we're feeding them whole grains. And if you're feeding them whole grains, they need something to be able to help them digest it. Otherwise, they can't get all the nutrients out of it properly. They cannot digest the stuff properly. And if you study chicken poop very carefully, who are on a whole grain diet, the ones, you know, the chickens that aren't doing very well, one, they're rather scrawny looking creatures, and two, if you look at their droppings, you'll notice that some of them do have bits of grain in the dropping. And it is quite unusual to see that, but I have seen it. Someone pointed it out to me once, that the chicken had pieces of grain in the dropping because they weren't getting enough gravel, and for some reason that particular chicken never ate enough gravel, and so it was always producing bits of whole grain. And so this chicken was particularly scrawny and didn't lay and didn't do anything else, and in the end it ended up furnishing a meal one evening for the family, I believe. Yeah, it's I do feel that they kind of missed out a little bit on there. We could have had quarries, we could have had even more immersion in the game, and so on and so forth. But yeah, that's the story of chickens. So I just wanted to give my tuppence worth on that, and I realise I've spent probably nearly 15 minutes talking about how chickens eat stones. Okay. I knew that I could talk about some things, but then I hope I haven't bored you too much with that. Let's go and check our chickens over here and see how they're doing. Have we had any more crates spawn? The only downside to this is I can't check that unless I go and get the tractor and bring it over and stick the forks in it. If I stick the forks in it, I can check it like that and see if it's working. I suppose what we could do is we could just sort of do this a minute, and we can... If I let me speed up time a minute, like that. We go to. I know what I'll do. I'm ticking along at 120 times speed for a second. We've got a load of bales up in the field. I'm not too worried about the bales in the field. We'll gather them up later. Maybe we'll do that in the next episode even. We got weeds busy growing in the field. By the time we sleep the night, there could very well be some more weeds in that field. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to press R, and I'm going to go for 13 hours sleep and take me to 8 o'clock in the morning. Tick all the way through like that. There's the weeds come up in the field. $7.5 grand in vehicle leasing costs. $2,000 in loan interest payments. Everything's very expensive these days, isn't it? Very expensive. Ooh. Okay, wool is now $2 grand a pallet. That's a bit more like it. That's the kind of thing that we were after. So £1,000 dollars, I should say. $1,000 a pallet is not what we want. We definitely want to go for that higher level right there. Animals, that's what I wanted. Let's have a look at our horses as well. What have we got in here? And hay and water is looking reasonable. These guys are up to $17,000 a piece, and Tech Lime up there at the top is 83% on $42,000. I may very well sell him, and we could buy a little skid steer for doing the sheep and stuff. Chickens, how are we doing? Chickens here, it says 917 litres of... Wait a minute. 917 litres? We've left that first one right there, but it's putting the eggs automatically straight into that pallet. That's what it's doing. It's not even spawning boxes. It's just now counting the pallet as the one that it's loading. 940. 695 on that one. 940, 695. 100 litres. You down here, we've got 150 litres. Okay, that's really cool. So it's working. It is actually working. We are getting our chickens actually. We're on 284 chickens at the moment. So we've still got room for another 100 chickens in these pens. But this whole thing here is working. Michael Boers, you are my new god. You are my god for this week. Okay? You are worthy of adulation and praise. You will have much of it. Let's go over this way. Let's just see what our chickens are doing over there. So we got 3 boxes down here where they've put a few out. And then over this way, we've got 2 more full pallets. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12, that's $24,000 worth of wool right there that we can take over and sell at the wool sell point. 24 grand for that. Plus we sell a horse. That means that we would then be in a position to go and buy a skid steer and bring one back. And I'm thinking, even though we've got that new JCB one, we've seen JCB before, right? That's the forestry version right there. And it does look very cool. With the tracks and everything, it does look very cool. There's no denying that. Right? I'm not going to deny that does look very cool. But it's 49 grand. This one over here is only 35 grand. This is a lot better, right? This is a lot better. Pedals on the floor. Now, let me see. It was... I'm just trying to get some muscle memory. I want to lift up the boom. I want to do that. And then... No, boom was that side. Boom, I'm pretty sure... Yeah, so I just closed my eyes and try to remember what it was like driving a Bobcat. It's been like 10, 15 years since I drove a Bobcat. Pedal on this side, I'm pretty sure was for the boom up and down. And then the pedal on that side was for the crowd backwards and forwards on the bit on the front. This piece here, see that part blade along there like that in two places, and you got these two ones here. That's the same as a Bobcat. That is the Bobcat connection system, right? You have it would have a little pin on it. So you go along and you just hook that bit there up in underneath, and then you lean forward from your cab. You would just lift up you see that safety bar there? That's the safety bar right there. You just lift that safety bar up so that you can lean forwards, and you don't even need to get out the cab. Once that safety bar is up, everything's disengaged. You can't move anything. And then you lift that one up to pull the pins back, and there's two pins that go into so it's not there. The pins are actually up here. They pull out to the side, wasn't it? Oh no, it was in back here somewhere. Anyway, there's two pins in there. You lift these levers up. Then you sit back down, you pull the safety guard down, you drive forward and you lift up the machine, whatever it might be, and then you tilt it back, and then you lift up the safety guard again, and this time you just kind of stand up and just nudge it with your feet, these two, and they just both ping back into place like that, right where they are, because they're on springs. The bolts shoot out, and they go right where they should. What you could do sometimes, you pick the implement up, right? Just pick it up into the air slightly with these down, and you then sort of crowd it so that the implement you're picking up is just kind of balanced, and it'll just move very easily. You just bring it back ever so slightly so there's a little bit of weight resting against those pins. Then you lift it up, and all you got to do is just lift the lever up and lift the other lever up, and then knock them straight back down again as well, and it just sort of drops itself into place with no actual real pressure on it. You had a little knack to doing it, because if you put the full weight of the implement against the pins, you couldn't move the pins. So you developed the sort of the feel for it, and you got the knack for it, and then you could very, very quickly jump them around. It was nice and easy. Great fun driving them. It really is. It's absolutely awesome fun driving one of those machines. I used to really love driving those, and I kind of miss this. There's one thing I do miss. One of the things I miss about not working in agriculture altogether is driving all the different machinery. I was never quite so keen on spending the entire day driving up and down a field, right? And it was fun, like, going to the field, starting up in the morning, maneuvering big machinery around the yard, getting out to the field, getting set up, doing the first round around the outside, all the interesting stuff. Then you'd spend all day just driving up and down the field. That bit was soul-destroying and mind-numbing and very boring. And I didn't like it at all. We got a lot of weeds in this field, haven't we? I didn't really like that bit. That's the bit that I don't particularly miss. But then at the end of the day, you got even just the bit in the middle of the day when you're going in between fields, where you fold everything up and you slowly wiggle your way through various different gateways with oversized machinery. That was always interesting. And then there were the days where you were doing stuff back in the yard, and you were just kind of doing stuff around the farm. And you would use 7, 8 different machines in the same day. You're constantly jumping from one machine to the other, doing loads and loads of different tasks. That was the kind of job. That was the kind of day that I really enjoyed. Those were the days that I liked doing, because of the huge variety of different tasks that you would do, and the huge variety of different machinery that you got to drive. And you'd get to drive a lot of different machinery. Some of it you could... it was like really, really easy. It was just a couple of different tractors, so it was fairly basic and stuff you were used to. And then you jump from a Bobcat to a tractor and a loader, and then back to a Bobcat, and then back to another tractor, and then you jump into a car and you move that. And if you'd driven a tractor for 10 minutes, then you jump into a little car and you drive that, and then you go to a Land Rover and you drive that. Very, very, very different between driving each one. Right? It's such a different feel to each of them. And I always enjoyed doing that. I always liked sort of hopping from one to the other all the time. And this is probably to do with my ADHD being kept entertained by doing lots and lots of different tasks. And that was the type of day that I enjoyed a lot more than just spending all day doing the same thing. And I know that there's plenty of people who are the complete opposite. The days where you're spending all day jumping from one to the other, the days that you really don't enjoy, and you actually prefer the days where you just get into the machine, you can really just get on with one task, and you really crack on and do a huge amount with it, and you feel like you've really accomplished something by the end of the day. And I sort of approach those days where I would just be bored. I'd be really, really bored with those days, and I always finished up a day where I'd done 200 different tasks, as that was my really productive day, because I'd done loads of different things instead of just doing the same thing all the time. So you got two different mindsets, and the way that myself and somebody with the opposite mindset to me, we walk away from those two different types of days completely different. So, and this is something that I try to sort of remember all the time, is that what I think is a satisfying and productive day, someone else will walk away from it thinking, oh, I didn't do anything today. We've been chopping and changing all day from one job to the next, and we haven't really sat there and accomplished very much. Whereas I'm thinking, yes, we did all of these different tiny little tasks, got a whole load of different ones done, and employed a whole load of different skills and all sorts, and it felt like a productive day. Whereas, like I just said, literally only a couple of minutes ago, if I'm spending all day in the same vehicle doing the same job, I get to the end of the day and I'm like, oh, I know we did cover a bit of ground, but I don't really feel like we've done very much. We've just done the same thing all day, and yeah, I'm not feeling as accomplished with myself. Whereas the person who's got that opposite mindset, obviously they're looking at it and they're thinking, we spent all day working on this task. We spent all day really getting something done. We've actually made a solid difference to it today. And so there's definitely two different types of people when you come to those types of tasks. And I am, without a doubt, the person that likes to jump from one job to the other at all times. In particular, I like to be able to jump from one machine to the next at all times. Right? I like jumping from one machine to another, driving lots of different types of machine. One machine that I can drive for a lot longer than others before I get bored is an excavator. I can drive one of those for several hours before I start to think, could really do with a bit of variation on this. Because just the act of driving the excavator itself is a pretty varied job. There are a few jobs with them that get a bit mind-numbing, but in general is a pretty varied sort of job anyway, so it's got some good points on it. Anyway, I have burbled on for long enough today. It is time for us to wrap things up. So I hope you really enjoyed this episode, and if you did, then could you please head down below and give us a like. And if you particularly enjoyed this episode, then please tell your friends all about me. Get them to come and watch as well. That would be awesome. And until next time, thank you very much for watching. This is Frithgar. Goodbye, and see you later.